Tesla semi-domination in Germany and the EU revealed is our story for today. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I wanted to also take time to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. And yes, I can play it, but we like to have our musical interlude be live. So just a quick couple of footnotes, and that is that the SpaceX trip has come together nicely. We're going to be in Redondo Beach and in Hawthorne, California, taking a look at meeting with experts about everything going on at SpaceX, and I think it's going to be awesome. Trip is going to start on April the 1st and go through April the 5th. And the primary area of the SpaceX of it will be the 3rd and 4th, which is a Friday and Saturday in April. If you'd like more details, please take time to drop us a note at admin@Teslafaninsight. We'd be happy to get you up to date on everything going on. And I think you'll be impressed by everything associated with it. At any rate, moving right along here, let us note also to you that we do have for Patreon supporters, we're doing extra shows during the week. We also have something called Trade Blast for those of you who are doing a lot of trading on Tesla stock. We have that available as well for sort of pre-market ideas that we have that might be helpful in your investing/trading process on a daily basis, especially in a volatile period like this. One other note that comes to mind, I've been checking calendars. The end of the quarter for Tesla is the end of this month, and a big day for all of us to keep an eye on is actually, I think, the 15th of March, to note to you, because by the SEC rules, I believe that's when Tesla has to announce if they're going to miss earnings along the lines of what Apple did a couple of weeks ago. So we expect there to be a little bit of a bump in stock post, figuring out if that's going to occur or not in terms of Tesla missing their number and therefore announcing sort of preview to that happening. So today's focus is the fact that a couple of weeks ago there was actually a story that came out that Tesla is actually petitioning Germany to get permission to operate the semi-truck on weekends. So I have to admit, this was a new one for me. I didn't know this existed, but a real smart move in Germany is the fact that in order to give the constituency a break, heavy trucks are not allowed to operate during the weekends. And so now people can sleep and don't have noise or pollution issues that are cut down by limited operations during that period for heavy trucks. So we were kind of stunned to learn that Tesla, because there's no pollution or noise, is starting the petitioning process in order to get the opportunity to operate during these times when there is currently no operations. So, we'll see how the unions respond to this, because obviously they get weekends off. But it's an impressive move to add 30% more functional operating time to when your vehicle can operate. And I just think that means, more profits for those companies, be it the trucking companies, the workers, et cetera. By the way, there's a brief note here. This is our B-roll for today is something called Convoy. So as you can see, there are 3 trucks running behind each other in a tethering process. There's a driver in the front truck and no driver in the rear 2 trucks. They're operating in Nevada, is what it looks like in terms of the images presented. And it's one of the ways Tesla's looking forward to developing and implementing their technology over time. There's actually some Daimler video of this as well that's out there. The one note, if you're paying attention closely, that I would add to it is you'll notice as the trucks go by, the rear of the truck does not have any of the kind of wind baffles to control turbulence off the back of the truck that we now see that's somewhat modern. So I think it's reflective of the fact that that video is approximately 4 years old, that we're using that comes from Tesla. We also wanted to note that you'll notice that while there are consumers that are providing plenty of video on how and what is going on with the Tesla Semi, we're having a few glances from Tesla in general, but they've really avoided providing us with sort of any look at what's going on with these with the Semi. And it really shows that, when Elon knows it's a winner, he says nothing. But when he knows it's a Semi, may or may not win, he's revealing a whole bunch of information that that you'd be surprised by. I wanted to. Wow, that reminds me. Wow, I'm a graduate of Stanford University, and part of our trip for Tesla is that we're going to spend some time at the factory and at the Gigafactory. And I just reminded that I actually have JB Strobel's email address. So I think I'm going to email him after this to see if we can include him as part of our SpaceX trip, given that he's not a full-time employee at Tesla anymore, and he has a couple of other ventures he's doing on his own. Any rate, this also brings up an issue that I wanted to mention to you, which is I'd like to ask you to take some time to watch a video. If you type in Stanford and proactive skincare, that will bring you to our entrepreneurship page at Stanford. And I wanted to note that if you take the time to listen to 10 of those podcasts, that's worth $1 million worth of information. And send me a note and let me know what you think of that experience. So getting back to our mainline show of the day, I wanted to note that, so basically, a whole bunch of questions popped up regarding Tesla's entry into Germany with the semi-truck. The biggest one for us is that it's our estimate that there's no way that the semi-truck gets to Germany within the next 5 years. And reason why? Because there are some very well-heeled companies like Walmart and UPS and all these companies that have thousands of trucks needed to retro their fleet over to electric. And I can't, at this point, Tesla hasn't announced any European supply destinations for their trucks. The only exception that, when I say European, I mean EU. There is evidently a Norway truck company that has recruited, and there's someone from the Middle East. But DHL's Deutsche Post has sort of purchased vehicles for its domestic U.S. operations. And so there's actually really nobody in Germany, theoretically, that has a large order in for the Tesla semi-truck. So that's part of it. But the bigger part of it is that the impact of the move to the electric semi from Tesla is so big that there are a large number of very well-heeled companies that have no choice but to fully switch over to electric. Otherwise, they'll be at a huge competitive disadvantage to those that do have that edge. It's our belief that in terms of early adopters, Walmart is sort of the number one sort of target. We checked it a while ago, but I think they have like 9,000 trucks. They wouldn't buy them all at once because they sort of pick up trucks, use them for 3 years at 100,000 miles per year for those trucks. And one would expect that they would just cycle them out in annual purchases versus just one big purchase of those vehicles. So, number one on the whole Germany thing is, how can you get any trucks to Germany within 5 years if all the production is consumed in the United States or a couple of other places around the world for that entire period? Numero uno. The second thing that popped up is, what happened to Daimler and all the other major European truck makes in terms of their sort of registering, at least in Germany, to start the process I just described? And we think that it's very strange, doesn't make any sense, given that electric has sort of come in. I've actually seen some trucks that were tethered like a streetcar trolley that are moving around in Germany or in Europe currently. I don't know if it's Germany specific, but the point basically is that Tesla tends to operate ahead of its competitors, and it's kind of shocking to see them petitioning in in this manner. The next thing we wanted to review is the strange relationship going on between the EU and Tesla and sort of German government and Tesla. One of the amazing points that came up is that, as you know, there's a rule in Europe requiring what's called cab over. So basically, the driver is sitting over the top of the wheels, and this reduces in that structure, you're allowed to have a longer trailer off the back of the truck. Otherwise, you have to have a shorter trailer. And so we were impressed to see that it was required that was a requirement by the EU, but with Tesla coming in, they're making exceptions to facilitate the viability of Tesla's current structure because they're so desperate to get those electric vehicles into the primary portion of the EU. So another phenomenon that's been happening is that the specs that are being written, so there's a finding system that's going to start coming into place for both cars and trucks over the next year in Europe. And pretty much the EU basically took the specs that there are on the Tesla Semi, and they've sort of rewritten the rules of what they expect from domestic manufacturers to what the Tesla Semi does. So you could end up with some very large fines coming out from both cars and truck manufacturers if they don't make the switch into the electric space consistent with what Tesla's been able to do. This also brings up the issue that we've seen numerous sort of conversations presented by senior executives at the big three OEMs, VW, Daimler, and BMW, where they were sort of articulating that the rules being laid out by the EU are completely unrealistic. And so as we have Tesla able to sort of do the rules as well as show the EU commissioners that the rules actually work for their vehicles, it's a major pain in the neck for the big companies in Europe because that which they stated was not possible, those folks are able to see in operation on a regular basis. So complete disaster for the folks in Europe, and a nightmare because they're being forced into performance parameters that they are currently not able to do, and it seems it might take quite a while before they are able to do so. You know, one of the other things that we're noticing here is there's ways that Elon Musk is choosing to be merciful or not. So because Tesla is spread out thin across cars and trucks and SUVs, Tesla's unable to, I would say, really concentrate and kill in one space of what they do. So for example, it's my belief that if you built 2 or 3 truck factories around the world currently, all those trucks would sell quickly because the performance parameters of the trucks are so amazing. And Tesla has not borrowed the money and built the factories and therefore producing the trucks. And so it slows the speed with which Tesla is able to get out and, if you will, destroy the market. We're also seeing the fact that they could have just built another China plant to service the needs of the EU/Germany, and they're choosing to go through the extra 1 to 1.5 years it takes to build a factory in Germany versus build it in China and ship it quickly so you could get more sales. So I guess you could say that we are seeing some Elon mercy in the process. The one example or ultimate form of mercy that we hope that Elon considers is the fact that they actually really need to license their technology. So I feel like we're at an inflection point right now for what's going to happen with electric in the future. There are large numbers of former Tesla employees that are now working with competing firms to deliver batteries and battery technology. And this is almost a critical point, like what happened with Apple and Microsoft, where as Windows came on, Apple's dominance in terms of, how computers are used sort of disappeared. And I do believe that we're sort of heading down that road here. And if Elon actually chose to license the technology and enable and sort of control the entire industry from their licensed technology. It would allow a lot of companies to stay in business that are going out as Tesla expands. It would also do a good job of expanding the impact of the pollution reduction more rapidly, and therefore reducing the damage caused by the non-use of electricity. So we're hoping that he considers it is considered to do something of this nature. One other sort of sidebar note that you might want to be aware of is you'll notice that the trucks behind me, they're solar. Tesla is putting up batteries to draw down energy from solar or wind farms, and wind is huge in Europe. In fact, there was a heavy wind period where Germany actually went negative. They started shipping power free of charge to other places because they'd produced so much wind power. And so it's not inappropriate for the trucks to have those spinning there, because it is clear that Europe is focused on how we're going to make the transition to renewables, and all kinds of wind farms and solar farms, et cetera, are a big part of sort of executing that transition. So, it would be interesting to see Germany go all electric more frequently and be able to fuel trucks like electric trucks, including Teslas, in the process, even though right now it just looks like, the software technology being operated on by these folks is a little bit, sort of distant and not happening. So, the final note that we wanted to roll into today is sort of what's going on with Tesla stock. And it's exciting to see it start to rise again. It's exciting to see somewhat calm regarding what's going on with the viruses. Italy is one country where sales would be hit for Tesla, but it doesn't seem to have been a huge implementation footprint, unlike Norway or some of the other places that Tesla is operating. I also wanted to note that there's kind of a fun subtext to what's going on for Tesla right now, and that is that there's Morgan Stanley just downgraded Tesla stock again, but they had already downgraded it multiple times over the last couple of months. And it was interesting to note how there's still a sort of a negative bias by a number of analysts on Tesla stock, but it continues to rise. So it's quite clear that people are aware that those guys are being paid off to be negative, and they really don't have a basis for it. And so I thought that was interesting. As we're closing out the quarter, we also wanted to ask you guys to start taking pictures of your local service facility if you go by or if you go there or going by, take a few photos, load them up on our Facebook page, Teslafaninsight, or even send them as an email, and we can include them maybe in a montage. Because as we see, is the lot full of cars? Is the lot short on cars? What are you seeing at your service facility? Because we can start to use that sort of gathering of information as a way to understand, like, how did the quarter go for Tesla? Was it a really good one, really bad one? Sort of where are we, given that that number and profitability is really going to influence the stock going forward. At any rate, this is... the next thing I wanted to do is also do our cybersecurity health tips along with our regular health tips. This is just a reminder to encourage you, don't use your debit card, use some kind of credit card, because their security is strong and they'll immediately give you cash back, where the banks might be a little bit slow, especially in places where the smaller the organization that you're using their credit card with, the higher the likelihood that their cybersecurity measures aren't as strong. Also to note on that front, it would take a supercomputer multiple years to crack your password if it's in that 14-character range. The lower the number of characters in your password, the easier it is for it to be cracked. So you want to be aware of that in terms of password management. And, I just think that, again, if you guys are using Bluetooth on your phone and you're in public places, do not be surprised if your phone is what's called bluejacked, where people can jump in, play software on your phone, or read what's on your phone, even though it's your phone. The Bluetooth permits access. So, definitely something to consider as we move to the what's called the Internet of Things. The big discussion right now in this regard is the number of people who've purchased Ring doorbells, and Ring's cybersecurity is actually quite weak. So there are a number of people who've had observing their children in other part of the home, and someone will actually come on to a Ring and speak to the child and be observing them through hijacking the internet connection that person has that they're using to observe that child within the house. So again, another one you should be aware of is what kind of cybersecurity measures are being taken by the organizations you're working with, because it can leave you vulnerable to a whole bunch of craziness that you should be aware of. Any rate, the other thing is just to review our usual health tips. Don't forget your 25 leg lifts a day. Make sure you strengthen the quad muscles, reduces chances of knee issues. Don't forget our 5-2 diet or some other fasting diet is a wise plan to consider. Fried foods no more than once a week as a way to reduce the chances of type 2 diabetes. Also wanted to encourage you to note eating habits change. I actually had a friend of mine, I call him the shrimp man, because in order to lose weight, he was doing a lot of salads with shrimp. And come to find out, he developed gout in the process. So as you age, what you can eat and quantities change. And so it's a good idea to be mindful of little details like eating habits that your body has shifted on that limit what you can eat and still be healthy. And so shrimp every day is probably not a good idea. Periodically works, I believe, but not on a daily basis, as is articulated by this late 50s gentleman who ended up with a gout problem as a result while he was trying to save calories from eating beef or other types of meat. So, any rate, always feel a little bit uncomfortable with dragging you guys into the health stuff, but it is at the end of the show, and we have reached our usual sort of discussion of Tesla, so we can include these discussions. Any rate, I want to thank you again for joining us today. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehitrot, Hebrew, Hoda, Hafez, Farsi. I was going to try Korean, but I need to go and make sure I pronounce it right. It don't sound bad. Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian. Do svidaniya, Dobrogenia. The hedge dough in Swedish. And in Jamaica, we say, "Nuff respect, walk good man." Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. We look forward to your comments.